what challenges the industry is facing, and what every leaders across the different companies they are trying to do, and what's working, what's not working. So we have designed a session, basically a panel discussion between the leaders from our industry to come and talk about opportunities and challenges in building the smart factories. And with that, let me kind of welcome the panel here. So if I can request the panel to go put on your video. So I'll first start with Annie. Annie is basically the CIO of Mother Dairy Fruits and Vegetable Limited, and we already talked about the e-lock use case that we had. Then I'll go to Sameep. Sameep is the digital head for the RPG group, and that's where the use case around the tire inspection was there. We have Ashish Desai. Mr. Ashish is the CIO for the Aditya Birla Group, and very involved with the Grasim. Thank you for joining. And after that, we have Rajiv. Rajiv is the head of sales, product solution, and commercial at Tata Communications Limited. Welcome, Rajiv. And finally, we have our moderator, Prasenjit Sengupta. He's the executive vice president and the head of digital at Thermex. So thank you all for joining for this wonderful discussion. And I think this will be the most interesting discussion we will have to understand what's going on in the digital space. So with that, I will pass it on to you, Prasenjit, to take the panel forward.
Thank you, Amit, and welcome to the second panel discussion of the MIC. So I'm Prasenjit Sengupta. Before I initiate the panel discussion, I would really like to congratulate all the winners today. I think it was really a very tough journey, and congratulations to everybody.
So today I missed Parna Ghosh. I'm extremely sorry. Parna Ghosh is the CIO for the Minda Group.
All right. So today when we think about manufacturing, we think Industry 4.0. But is it just a buzzword doing the rounds, or is there more meat to it? And also on top of it, the pandemic has played really a great leveler. And it is one of the greatest impetus to a remote and connected world till date. Manufacturers are rethinking competitive advantage for the post-pandemic landscape and using various technologies like AI, ML, VR, just to name a few. So we have, as Amit introduced, we have a very august gathering of leaders who matter, leaders who are in the frontline decision-making of their organizations leap into the next generation. So let me go around the panelists and hear directly about the opportunities and the challenges that they are facing in building smart factories, which is also the theme of today's discussion. Starting with Ashish. Ashish, Grasim is a true global layer in the fashion value chain. May I request your views on the subject of digitalization and how do you look as an organization around it?
Thank you, Prasenjit. And first of all, congratulations to all the startups who participated in this program. It was, and maybe only one of them can get the winner. So congratulations, everyone. Prasenjit, about our journey in Aditya Birla Group, we feel digitization is a way to create a new business model. We are looking at it from the different perspective. One, we are looking this in how can we add value to operational efficiency in various areas, be it in the area of supply chain, be it in the area of let's say customer, be it in the area of manufacturing. Also, we are trying to see how can we use digitization to create a new business model. How can we convert this into some kind of evaluation? How can we work with companies like startup and create some kind of IPs for us, which can then be used in various business technologies? Aditya Birla Group, if you see, we are into all segments. We are into mines, we are into metals, we are into chemicals, we are into cement. Also, we are into the various retail segments. How can we leverage this data for end-to-end usage to Aditya Birla Group? I think that's something which is going to be the differentiator for us going forward. And that's where our focus is for future. And I must say that there are a lot of efforts which are going on as of now as well. That's it, Roshanji.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashish. Moving on to that, you evergreen staples industry. So how is digital shaping up for you?
Sanjit, you are breaking.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, better.
All right. So Annie, maybe I'll move to you next. So Annie, you are representing the evergreen staples industry. So how is the entire digitalization shaping up for you?
See, we have seen digitalization as a huge opportunity, right? I mean, if you look at it, if we examine where we are, typically we are in three primary segments: dairy, oil, edible oil, and fruit and vegetable. So if you look at the nature of the business, it's a very supply chain intensive business. And while there are a lot of manufacturing facilities also where there is an immediate opportunity for bringing in smart factory initiatives, our focus where we see huge wins are in the supply chain. And that is where we have been putting in a lot of effort. So if you look at it, if I say mobility as digitalization 1.0, we are possibly only 60-70% of that has happened, right? So it's a vast ocean. We are trying to see if I pick up a consumer piece or a customer piece itself. We have enabled our business partners to come to us with mobile applications and reduce the speed, reduce the time to order, etc. But if you look at a retail consumer, our end consumer, there's still so much of opportunity. If I look at vehicles, like for inbound or outbound vehicles, we have addressed the telematics piece, but there is still so much of opportunity from our video analytics. Are there pilferages happening? Possibly the combination of 5G, edge computing, etc., will transform it even further. So we are very excited about the huge canvas of opportunity which is there. We are taking bite-sized chunks and trying to address that at least every process gets touched upon, and then every process we will do a 360-degree application.
Great. Thank you, Annie, for really bringing in a perspective from the overall perspective of digitalization. Samir, the RPG group extends from automotive to technologies to life sciences. You must be having your hands full as well. So what do you think about digitalization in your industry work?
Thanks, Prasanjit, and thanks, NASSCOM, for having us here. I think when we started this journey around 5-6 years back, I always say that digital was a fad then. It really kind of, nobody knew what it means. Is it equal to IT? Is it just a mobile app? Is it a portal, or is it something a lot more transformative? I came from a consulting background before that, 12-13 years. And the one thing that we did, and which when I look back worked for us, is that though I came from a consulting background, the first thing we said is that we will not have a digital strategy. We don't need a digital strategy. We have a business strategy. Every business and the BU has their own short-term, long-term, and the vision, mission. We spend enormous time, management spends in defining what they want to achieve. So first thing a digital has to do is to see how they can actually enable that business strategy and participate into that. Because the moment you have a different and a parallel digital strategy, the first question that starts with is an ROI. And lot of digital projects, the first thing you'll struggle is an ROI because they are very long-term. Unless you're talking about something which is transactional part of a digital. So transactional digital, we encapsulated into IT and kept it separate, saying that's a CIO's office. And a transformational digital, which is going to fundamentally change the business, whether in an incremental or a transformative, short-term or long-term under digital. And we've created all those teams, which comes with the people. So the biggest challenge, I always say, digital is not a technology. It is people who can think of exponential application of a technology for the business you are in. Okay. Now you need those people who can think of those exponential technology and the application. Once you figure that out, then you'll find a vendor. If you don't find a vendor, you have not reached to the right vendor, but you'll find a vendor eventually. So I think a lot of our effort has been in working with businesses to solve the business problem and take it. Like we are basically largely a manufacturing group. So if you look at it 20 years back, manufacturing said OE was a god. It is still a god. It will be a god 20 years down. So what you want to solve in manufacturing is given. That's not going to change. But how you solve it and actually can you create a competitive, sustainable advantage is basically where we are putting our mind. In that, then we divided it into 4 areas. We said, look, one is the future factories, which is a smart manufacturing as we call. And I think the theory is 5-6 levels away from where the practicality is. So industry 4.0 and practically we are 1.0, if I just draw that analogy. Then there is a product side of it, all the products that we manufacture, whether it will give me a hygiene that it's must for me to make my product smart, or like tire as a service. As we speak, we are actually rolling it out. We've rolled out tire as a service, which is going to change the industry. We're one of the first company in the India to roll it out, CPKM model, which is cost per kilometer. It's already operational. So some of these second bucket. So first was a manufacturing. The second was a product. The third is a entire customer, which in a B2B first time digital gives you an advantage to go closer to the customer like never before. Today, when you spend $500 on a Domino's pizza, you know when the pizza is in the oven. But people spend lakhs and crores of rupees in the products like a transformer in Thermax. I started my career in Thermax, like economizers and all that. But when you call and a customer says, where is the product? You probably have to make so many calls, identify the vendor, identify the supervisor, the worker who knows exactly why. So I think the customer is the third bucket we looked at. And the fourth is the field. How do you make lives of the people in the field much more effective? For us, that's one of the big area because of the EPC industry that we play in, life sciences industry that we play in. And then we looked at in these 4 buckets, we not said everybody will do everything. We said, what is a backbone? Like Annie said, for them, supply chain was a backbone. Like an EPC industry, site is a backbone. Life sciences industries, MR and doctor engagement is a backbone. So we always look at a backbone and see that what digital advantage I can bring in that backbone and then align our digital investment. So I take a pause here, but that's kind of an approach that we try to look at a digital. Today, as we speak, we've got a dedicated teams, it's a well-established, funded, have its own budget. So it's a very well-oiled engine, but our approach and a philosophy that we started 5-6 years back, we see it's working pretty well for us.
Absolutely, Samir, and I couldn't agree with you more as well. I mean, a sustainable competitive advantage is exactly what digitalization should all be about. Thank you very much. Moving on to you, Rajiv. So telecommunications is the very reason why we are still being able to have this panel discussion online. What is your take of the future of digital for your organization?
Yeah, thanks, Sanji. And I think on a lighter note, while you mentioned Tata Communications is the reason for virtual, right now I don't have lights at my place. I'm actually on a Jio broadband. So I mean, sorry for that. I haven't switched on my video. So I think digital, and I think Samir mentioned, right? I mean, if somebody would have told that in digital 3 years ago and all, typically people would relate it transactional. You know, okay, digital means let's install an SAP, let's automate some of the processes, and let's, from our organization perspective as well, we are changing the way we do business. For example, Rakesh, my colleague, did mention about, you know, we are into the IoT business. And for us, IoT is all about on-field sensors. How do you connect processes? How do you connect, you know, the man-machine material story? How do you interconnect? And for us as well, in this pandemic times and during this time, it has been very difficult to connect with customers to do. And this is where digital has really played a huge role for all of us. We have completely changed the way we do business. So nowadays, we are actually doing business, working with customers. We are doing complete remote monitoring. We are enabling remote monitoring for a lot of our customers. In fact, Thermax, we had remote monitoring of a lot of solutions that could be done. As far as of the story and customer, that is where our focus has been, to work with them, try and see what better solutions can we do on the IoT front and how can we enable that, right? So for example, on the digital front, we do have LoRa as one of the technology. We talk about NB-IoT is coming up big time, 5G is coming up big time. So how can we sort of stitch a solution together on the digital journey and help companies like yours to sort of get the ROI and the business value that all of you are looking at? All said and done, I agree to Sandeep's point that at the end of the day, what drives digital is eventually the value that you get out of it. I mean, gone are the days of proof of concept. Nowadays, it's about proof of value. Show me the value. Every customer wants to see the value. Okay, I'm ready to do intervention. Show me the value out of it, right? I mean, we've got the best and the best of video analytics. We've got the best and the best of tools and AI solutions out there. But none of them are helpful if at all does not drive the value altogether. Something which I like to mention in most of my sales pitch or even during the product thinking, Look, Indians, as Indians, we have a very disruptive mindset, find jugards and solutions, right? So I might have the best technology out there, but I am actually competing with the normal Indian disruptive mind who will come with a very small scale jugad to sort of solve the digital problem. So that's our approach has been at Tatacom as well. Even on the IoT space where we work with a lot of startups, right? We come across a lot of startups, a lot of brilliant ideas, some of them which got the award in the NASCOM forum as well. And one thing which you realize is it's good to be digital savvy, good to keep on focusing, but not to lose sight that you are creating for your customers and for your employees as well on that front. So that has been our journey, Prasanjit, in terms of how we are digital and we are enabling our customers to start working on digital.
Thank you, Rajiv. And we will always depend you for all the connectivity requirements as we go through our process of onboarding business on their digital journey.
No worries. I think more than happy to be partner to all the panelists on this forum.
Thank you, Rajiv. Parno, your organization is driving the auto growth both in India as well as across the world. And automotive, as we all know, has been a sector that is also a leader in digitalization for many, many years. Where do you see the opportunity?
First of all, thank you, Prasanjit, and thanks to all the panelists for joining this session. Thanks to NASCOM for organizing Manufacturing Innovation Summit. I think, and also congratulations to all the awardees who have been awarded in various segments for their startup initiatives. So, before we start, one thing we have to understand that automotive industry overall is going through a huge disruption for last at least few years. From BS4 to BS6 was a big transition, and then suddenly EV came into place, and a lot of confusion started happening. At the same time, ACEs, which is autonomous, connected, electric, and shared, out of which at least electric and shared mobility took a front seat. And especially shared mobility has disrupted the industry very heavily. And then back, COVID also came as a new disruptive situation for all of us. So this industry is going through heavy disruption, and wherever there is disruption, there are opportunities, as you know. So, and I agree to all the panelists about their industry viewpoints and the way they are planning for the digitization in their areas. We predominantly work in a B2B environment where the side of the customer is pretty fixed, and we are 100% or I will say 200% dependent on the customers, whether it is orders, whether it is RFQs, whether it is innovative tools, whether it is innovative solutions, next generation technologies. Whatever we do has to be 100% aligned with the customers. We cannot play an independent role in the market and say we are doing something different, because we are completely playing in the B2B market. That's point number one. Point number two is, the first, mover taker, or rather the first mover advantage is basically we need to be competitive in the market. Why Industry 4.0 is coming into India, and or why we are now trying to embark on the journey of I 4.0 is basically to remain competitive. And if you remember the slogans from our Prime Minister about Atmanirbhar Bharat or Digital India or whatever the new, the initiatives coming up, all are basically to support the industry to remain competitive in the global market. And because there is a shift happening from the China to India, Vietnam, and Indonesia and other countries, obviously there will be a lot of opportunities coming up. And if we don't, if you're not competitive in terms of technology, cost, and productivity, I think we will miss the bus this time as well, because we already missed the bus in 90s or 80s when China really picked up fast in the space of manufacturing. Second driver is basically reduction of cost, and operation cost is basically whether it is a labor cost or process cost or utility cost. These are the main three components apart from the raw material cost or the bought out parts where the cost is there. So I mean, look at the cost structure and how to optimize the cost to become more relevant and sustainable for future. Because today's state, we work with 22,000 employees across 70 locations almost. Now, this 22,000 employees, if we just go on multiplying like that, and the way we are looking at mergers and acquisitions and also rolling out services and factories in the abroad market, I think we'll soon reach to 40,000 or something like that. So I think remaining competitive with respect to labor cost and other relevant related costs are extremely important. That is one of the drivers. Third is the processes are all getting disrupted. You know, people are looking at digital as I think Samit or someone was also speaking about it. Is digital is not just a technological intervention. It is basically a change in the process, a change in the ways of behaviors of customers, the new business model. I think the new revenue model rather. I think so. That's why we have to look at the processes, how it's getting transformed. So I talked about the business. I talked about the process. I talked about the technology, and obviously people is also heart of the whole thing. So change in people's behavior also. The new generation employees, Gen Y, Gen X, however we define them, they are also going through a huge transformation in terms of the ways they want to interact with their peers or the organization. So we also embarked the journey on, suppose, digital HRM one year back with success factors and stuff like that. So I think we are looking at all the areas in terms of transformation, and innovation is one of the areas is very strong in our DNA. Visibility into operations is extremely important. Whether whatever we do in the organization, as Annie said, supply chain is one of the major areas of their the focus areas. So I think for us also supply chain, manufacturing, as well as logistics, these are the three major focus areas, and we need a real visibility into the operations, what is going on a real-time basis to take the right decisions at the right point of time to again remain competitive and look at.
Thank you, Parna. And I have also spent almost 20 years in the automotive industry, so I can very, very clearly relate to every single of the challenges that you also mentioned. Thank you very much. We heard so many views now of how the digital world is shaping around us and how we are trying to cope with this. And Industry 4.0, as we also discussed, is at the heart of the digital manufacturing. Now let us hear about some of the specific examples from some of our pioneers here. Samit, may I start with you, and may I request you to share some of your factory experiences in the area of Industry 4.0 space?
Sure, I'll give a couple of examples and try to be as concise as I can. In one of our factory, when we started this future factory journey, Prasanjit, the first thing we did is that we actually went to Germany to look at what is this Industry 4.0, which is celebrated as a benchmark in the industry, all that's spoken about. And came back a little disappointed because what I saw there, I realized it's not going to be useful in India because it was mostly an automation. You go to the Hamburg factory of a Siemens, which is one of the most celebrated Industry 4.0. It is basically entire automation of a line. Now, when I look at our factories, these are either project-based products that we have, like a transformer or an EPC that we have, or a tire, which is kind of an hybrid industry. And we said that what we saw is not what we can do. Then we said, let's understand the principle. And we took a theme for a factory. We said our first smart factory, which is in Chakan, we said that our biggest problem was visibility of an operation. I gave an example of saying that when you spend $500 on a pizza, you come to know where the pizza is, right, in Durban. Similarly, we said that we want to make this B2B. We said that we want to deliver an Amazon kind of experience in our industry. And we wanted to take visibility to utmost level of from the P&L head who comes to know, as you would know, some of these products have a penalty associated with it. So today in our visibility as a running factory manager, the P&L head comes to know what is the running penalty as I run my plant, okay, at real time. And the moment there is a rush order that comes, that penalty automatically changes if you actually make the changes. Similarly, when the operator before going to the factory knows the work which is actually assigned to him. The operator in the bus can actually on his iPad look at all the machines, look at which machine is down, which people are available, which machines are down for how long, and he can do this entire 45 minutes of start of the shift is basically traditionally data points coming together. It is not people, it's big data point which came together sharing the data, which digitally can easily be democratized. So we democratize that 45 minutes saying that give that data, democratize data and give it to whoever wants to see that. Now that saves us a lot of start of the shift time for us. So this is one example of now, if I get into the technology part of it, it needed IoT, it needed analytics, it needed cloud, every buzzword that you talk about, it needed. But the one problem it solved for us is it actually increased our throughput time, first time in the history of that plant by 15% in a year. Never happened in the history of that.
Amazing.
It is a direct ROI that you see into the plant, because you're trying to solve something by keeping in mind what matters to that business, that plant, that shade, right? Similarly, the second plant, which is our gas meter, not every time this big bang thing will work, right? Because there could be constraints of the budget. There could be so many things that may come into that and not necessary at time. So there could be sometime a pointed intervention that you look at, saying that how digital can in one of our gas. So we manufacture this gas meter, and the gas meter basically has 50, 60 component that goes into it, and there's very high tolerance because there's small dimension here and there could be a leakage. Now that entire testing of that meter is basically a mechanical indexing. So the moment we ship it out, before we ship it out, we want to bring it back to zero. So we actually flow the air instead of a gas for obvious reason. And then we ensure that at a 0, 0, 0, it has to stop. We call it as a perfect zero. Now, traditionally, people had accepted that because it was 0 pe to hoga nahi, 5, 6 hoga, 8 hoga. Sometimes it gets rejected if it's beyond 5. And there were 24 people who were just kind of looking at that reading saying, jaise 0 hoga, I'll stop it, right? So that I deliver a perfect zero. Now, it's a very simple thing. We did that then we looked at a digital and said that, look, our problem is delivering a perfect zero. And we actually bought a very simple vision analytics camera, the Raspberry Pi, and we integrated it with PLC. And the moment there is a 0, 0, 0, the PLC cuts off. And today we are saying 100% 0, 0, 0 delivered. And those 24 people, which has to, because 24 people, because 24 meters were there. So everybody's monitoring 1 meter. Okay. Now that has gone down to 6. It's like nobody needs to be there actually. We only need people to kind of take out the meter and bring the new meter, right? The monitoring part is completely done by the camera. It does two things. One is, of course, and the objective here was not to bring down the people. Of course, those people are deployed in doing something else. But the objective is to deliver this perfect zero experience that we were promising, but as an industry, learn to live with that variation, which we are actually able to deliver. And actually, the cost-wise, the Raspberry Pi, the camera cost is not very high. Integration with PLC is not. So now when you retrospectively see, you feel it's such an obvious solution. Why didn't we think of it? But when the industry start living with the problem and it kind of it becomes a norm, that's when the biggest barrier comes. Because nobody challenges that. And you need people who will go into the plant and challenge things. And the problem with manufacturing, and I started my career with the manufacturing consulting, so with the due respect, but people in manufacturing are bombarded with so many frameworks year on year, from ISO to Six Sigma to TPM, Lean, about that there's a belief that there is nothing left now. You go and speak to somebody who's a boss, ho gaya. I mean, we are at TPM, we are a Deming, what more can you get out of this, right? But and that's why I said that you need these people who can actually have a technology running at the back and think business. And they'll say, yeah, this I can improve. So there are a number of examples, but these are, I thought, two interesting examples that that really kind of, we thought a very tangible benefit when we actually think of it. So those are two examples that I would like to share. Many other, in EPC, for example, our focus has been drones. So I think we won the last year award for using drones for entire land topography, and we changed that industry complete by using the drone. There are many challenges, right, from legal to image analytics to accuracy. But today there are entire tower inspection after the assembly of a tower, whether it's a missing hole or a missing bolt, run by the drones and image analytics. So that changed our lead time drastically. That helped us reduce the fatalities in many different ways. So there are many examples, but these are very specific examples where we saw tangible benefit coming through.
And very apt examples as well. Porno, one or two examples from the auto sector.
Yeah, as I told you in my previous discussion, that our major focus area is shop floor, supply chain, and logistics. And I can tell you one more thing. I think I should have spoken in the first session. The industry 4.0 as a buzzword, I mean, which has been imported from Germany, like we import many things from China today. So this is basically, for us, it is looking like we are in a wish list which is yet to achieve, and we don't know where we are today exactly. I mean, some companies are still in industry 2.0, some are in 3.0, some are trying to do from 3 to 4. I mean, it's a huge complex scenario in this country. So I will talk not from my organization, also from ACMA, because I'm also the committee member of digital for ACMA. So I know what is going on in the entire industry. But let me give you some specifics of what we are doing right now. So we have done a pilot for AR, or augmented reality, for our training rooms, which we call dojo rooms. Dojo rooms are nothing but it's a Japanese word. When we train the people, basically before they are deployed on the shop floor. So there we have utilized augmented reality for creating, how to actually, prepare a wheel or a wheel assembly, and then finally, end of the day, you are taking an exam also, how you have learned that thing. And if you fail, you have to again go through that exam kind of processes. IoT we have planned, already deployed in 5 factories. Although I say it is end-to-end, but let me give you some specific examples what we have done in IoT. First of all, we have removed the SAP manual integration by, intervention by the people who are trying to punch the production orders, confirmation, stuff like that, which is currently coming automatically from the machine, and the production is getting confirmed in the system. And for that, actually, we have bought a lot of licenses also from SAP. SAP also got benefited out of it. So this is one, example, and he's laughing. And second is we have brought OEE and OLE also into the framework, because that is one of the things we were capturing manually earlier, and now it is happening automatically from the system itself. Energy utilization is one thing, and I can give an example of our wheel assembly factory, which is highly energy consuming factory. Around 5% of the total revenue is spent on energy, and 5% is extremely high, and it is actually eating up your bottom line P&L. So there we are trying to, actually we have already implemented, and we are trying to save at least 1% of the 5% savings. And we are finding out the leakages, we are finding out the energy losses, we are finding out the where, like example, between 2 batch productions, which are the lean areas where still the energy is working, and you don't need to consume the energy, something like that. So these kind of scenarios we are trying to build, and we are trying to save at least 1%, which will be a direct savings, and the ROI is extremely fast. Third, a few more examples: material flow, FIFO, barcoding, and e-Kanban. E-Kanban, as you know, I think you are from automotive, so the Kanban is a very proven solution, and through this IoT, we are trying to do an e-Kanban methodology, automation, and obviously using barcode. 3D printing and PLM we have implemented in 2 factories, which are basically trying to create the digital twins. Basically, this is fast time to market, and at least we can deliver the products very fast as prototypes and submit to the customers for applications. Big data we are planning now for sales and marketing, for business planning, which will be a very optimistic project for B2B scenario, auto ancillary market, but we are trying to do certain scenario buildings, and we'll come back in the next few sessions of what we are doing exactly on that. AI, we are trying to again do some POCs on RFQ, sales forecasting. Visual analytics is one of the areas which is going to come up very, very strong. And I believe Samit may contribute better in this, because in tire, lot of visual inspection is required when the final assembly is coming out of the lines. And I believe we are also trying to do it for our bigger parts, where, with some cameras and stuff like that, we take the images of different functional areas of the part and trying to do a correlation between the actual image and the visual image, and then try to make some scenarios like what kind of failures may happen in future. So that's very interesting, and we're trying something. And lastly, telematics is one of the areas where we are trying to work with our logistics, which are mostly outbound logistics, which is supply to our OEMs like Maruti, Honda, Heroes, Tata Motors, and trying to find out where the truck is, monitoring the trucks, their patterns, their target expected time to deliver to the actual time to deliver, and all this stuff we are trying to monitor into telematics. So these are the projects we have already rolled out, and many things are in pipeline. If you ask me, a very strong digital strategy in terms of I 4.0, it's still evolving, and I don't know there is a right strategy or a wrong strategy, but things will evolve over a period of time.
True, absolutely right. I think we can never say that our strategy is hardbound and cast in stone. It can never be that. However, I will take up maybe one statement out of your entire discussions. When you were talking about people, you were talking about learning. And I can also see that smart people are really the ones who are bringing in ideas for the future. And that is where the entire startups are also powering in the new. And Annie, I also am aware that you have got an extremely well-connected manufacturing setup, and you also like working with smart people. So can you share certain experiences of yours of working with smart people, startups, and anything else that you would like to share in your experience working in that kind of an ecosystem?
Thanks, Prasenjit, for that. Yeah, we have tried to work with quite a few startups. A lot of great ideations have come in. In fact, I'm very optimistic about the winner this time also. that the solutioning looks very interesting, and being able to implement it and take it to execution would be a great win. We have done, I think at least we have tried working with 4 to 5 startups till date as a focus, because we find that the innovation and the agility, because normally any innovation is an iterative process, right? And compared to larger organizations, the ability of a startup to take back ideas, improve on their product, bring it back. So many instances, like we did something with our milk booths, where we wanted to do power analytics at our milk booths, and see whether we could bring in reduce the number of outages at the milk booths, and have more stable cooling systems in place, right? Something with our ice cream cart tracking, we have tried to do with startups. Some ORM kind of solutions we have tried to do with startups also, right? Our experience is that innovation ideation is very good. Their ability to deliver is also very good. However, a word of caution, their operational skills are where we hit a lot of problems. The ideation stage works very well. Taking it to execution, setting up an ecosystem which is able to support and manage. So typically as Mother Dairy, we like to work in an OPEX model, especially the new technologies where we don't have in-house skills to be able to support the new technologies. It makes sense to bring in outside partners to work with us, which is where startups deliver a lot of value. But when we try to work in an OPEX model, it needs manpower, it needs certain tie-ups between the startups and a field force which will support this ecosystem. It also needs some amount of initial capital, where we can of course work with them on how to manage the asset deployment, but the regular servicing support, even from an ORM perspective, which doesn't need so much of intervention, but it needs SLAs to be delivered. We found that their ability to deliver as per SLAs was very challenging. And to me, my advice to a startup is a good idea, a good innovation is great. But if you have to grow to the next stage and work with corporates and enterprises, tie up with partners who are able to implement and support the products is very essential. And to have those sustainable ecosystems in place is very critical.
Yes, Annie, I fully endorse your views as well. And whereas, as you mentioned, that the startups can bring in the agility and the speed, but basically the basic sustenance and understanding of the business is something that might be lacking. Rajiv, I think bringing on the topic from where Annie ended, a platform like MIC surely helps people like us from the corporate background, don't you think? I mean, what has been your experience with platforms like MIC, where the startups and the corporates are coming together? Is it helpful for both the corporates as well as the startups, or are there any wins and losses on both sides?
I think, Prasanjit, I absolutely agree with you that, platforms like SEO, platform where a lot of innovation is celebrated and, admired and, what you call motivated to do that, it really helps both corporate as well as the startup. Because building onto the statement which you made, right, a lot of times startups do bring in a lot of agility, freshness in thinking, but they may be lacking in terms of the way they actually conceive business models, the way they conceive their commercial thought process around it. Like Annie mentioned that, most of the times when you actually think about new solutions and innovative solutions, you may not want to put in a capex. You want to try and, can it be as a pay-as-you-service model? Can it be a service model? Can it be a usage-based model? This is where startups really need to think about while we bring in a lot of, and this is where the benefit of these platforms actually come in. A corporate, people working on corporate do have that structure in mind that, to make a product successful or to make a solution successful in the market, there are structures in place and different models in place, how you can sort of put into place, right? It could be a pay-as-you, usage-based model. It could be some models in terms of how do you do servicing. I mean, at least I have come across a lot of startups, very brilliant ideas, but the moment the corporate customer actually asks that, okay, fair enough, now what? How will you service me? Solution up and running for the next whatever 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. This is where the aggregation of a corporate mindset and a startup idea generating mindset really help. We ourselves as Startup Communications, we actually work with a lot of startups in this segment because IoT. I don't believe that there is a single company in the world who can do everything under the garb of IoT. It is a pure play collaboration world out there, right from sensors, analytics that you do to the connect. It's a proper, integration of multiple ideas and multiple technologies coming together. We do work with a lot of startups, and this is one of the primary challenges that I typically come to, right? I mean, it's very fantastic ideas, very fantastic proof of concept. Journey from a proof of concept to a proof of value to a scale up is where eventually corporates and startups will actually work together and bring it up. I mean, that has been my experience and view, and these platforms definitely help because it gives us also an idea in terms of what's new that is happening, and for startups to reach out to all of us and try and build their solutions and business models they want to execute in the market.
Thank you, Rajiv, for your views. I think we are having a great conversation so far with so many examples of collaborations are being discussed. But the point that is nagging me again and again is about security. Automation, remote working, digitalization, all these topics escalates the possibility of data breaches. And it escalates it tremendously. And we have also seen it happen in the last 8 months when we have been working from home. Ashish, with your global network, how significant do you think these risks are, and what are your views on tackling them?
Yeah, Prasenjit, you're absolutely right. With people moving on from IT to OT, we are moving the risk from normal PC-based work to our manufacturing technologies. So for us, I would say that yes, we are trying to focus more on how can we do a robust network for our OT system. How should we bring in the air gapping into various systems? What kind of technologies we should do, which ensures that only one-way traffic happens between the various IT to OT integrations. Also, we are not limiting our various audits not only to internet-based system, but we are also going to the OT systems as well as to the minor test level of the equipment as well. Also, at the same point of time, we are parallelly investing in the basic infrastructures like DLPs, like PIM, right? Also, on to the moving towards the cloud infrastructure, wherein things like Zscalers and other things is what we are trying to invest in. I would say this also we are integrated various OT technologies with, or I would say it's in process of integrating the various OT technologies with our SOC framework. So we are trying to say that how can we get an alert of anything happening in our manufacturing technologies to the SOC network, and how quickly we can predict or preamble a particular solution. I would say this is a work in progress, and security is kind of a whack-a-mole game. You try to fix something, somewhere else you will get some issues. So I think it's a work in progress document, but efforts are there to ensure that we build the right robust OT network to ensure that we have a less of issues related to any hacking scenario.
Yes, thanks Ashish. And I can also see, at least from my organization, that our spend that we are doing on the security portion has dramatically increased over the last couple of years. Okay, so fantastic. I think we have already crossed around 36 minutes, as I see. So as we draw to a close, because we have got about 40 minutes, I will go around the panel quickly to understand how the post-pandemic world looks like from a perspective of a connected factory and an industry 4.0. So Ashish, maybe we can start with you now. So do you have any last words, any last views on how will the post-pandemic world look like?
I would say that the pandemic has given us an opportunity to move fast, do something on a very rapid pace. It has also given us an opportunity to do something which was not happening previously. Few examples which I would like to give is that we how can we leverage on the what Samir just mentioned few things on the video analytics piece. So we started something, we wanted to do something for a long time, but pandemic gave us an opportunity, and within 3 months time we could roll out certain solution which has helped us in safety as well as predicting something into COVID. Also, pandemic is also helping us in the area of manufacturing. So Parna just mentioned about the energy cost. So pandemic helped us to move into the OT technologies and understand how is my energy consumption. For our business, 60% of our cost is energy. Even if I save a fraction of a percentage for energy, it adds crores to our bottom line. And we have been able to save something, show something using data analytics too in one of our plant, wherein we will be able to save a few crores in only one plant. Third area, I would say that data analytics. How can data analytics be used for various areas in logistics, supply chain, or finance? To give an example of logistics, our logistics spend is somewhere around 600 crore only for one of the business, I mean to say, right? We are trying to say that how the data what we have generated in our logistics control tower, how can we use this for things to reduce the per ton per kilometer cost, which is PTPK? How can we go to the model of a backhaul? Identify using this data that which is my transporter who's taking a trip cost of a two-way from us, but is also doing some kind of a trip for other customers. So these are the few things which we are trying to do using data analytics. So our focus area would be safety, energy cost reduction, and how can we improve our logistics cost. And I would say that pandemic has really given us an opportunity to move or work on this opportunity on the faster pace.
Thank you, Ashish. Any more online purchases for you? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think lots more. If you ask me, the post-pandemic opportunity, we have attended so many webinars, opportunity to attend so many webinars. We are bursting with ideas. I think all of us have heard so many ideas, which normally physically we wouldn't have been able to be part of so many sessions. So that itself has given us so many pointers on what we ought to be working on. Huge learnings from everyone. And I think as an industry, opportunities for horizontal expansions are so much that we keep picking up these opportunities. So even industry 4.0, right? Even if we don't directly go into a smart factory kind of opportunity, using whatever sensor-based, IoT-based opportunities, augmented smart factory kind of opportunities, to me, possibilities of reducing breakdowns, working on those opportunities, video analytics linked quality initiatives. Those are some things which we have already been working on. The pandemic kind of brought a break into that. We want to continue doing that because especially in the fruit and vegetable segment, we believe there is no dearth of opportunities there. Something which we had tried to do in the booth, like I mentioned, the booth power analytics, where we kind of hit a lot of problems because when we are trying to do ML on power consumption and their predictive maintenance kind of thing, we found that building those patterns ourselves was very difficult. I am hoping that as this ecosystem matures, a lot of OEMs could possibly come out with these patterns themselves, which will give us access to identifying these faults based on the ML studies which are already, or the ML database which is already available. So a lot of training could already be available by the time we look to adopt some of these ML initiatives. So yes, a lot of ideas out there. We are hoping that we will pick up a lot of those and take them forward to implementation.
Thank you, Annie. Same here. I also hope for the best. Samit, a quick view from your side, please.
No, I'll just say, we've always said digital transformation or Industry 4.0 is always seen as a fourth industrial revolution. And I'm sure 10 years down the line, when people will look at how this transformation unfolds, the biggest trigger would be taken as the pandemic. Because for any transformation, when you say industrial revolution has to happen, it only happens when the masses joins it, right? Now, if you look at post-pandemic, that is the change that you will see. Because there are many people who become more curious, one, because of the need, because sheer business continuity was on top of the mind, business risk management was on the top of the mind. So digital became more curious minds have started learning how it can help solve them problem. Whether it is the frontline sales guys, supporting functions, everybody's actually started thinking of it. So that one change will happen when the awareness quotient of the digital will actually start coming down the pyramid. And when it starts coming down the pyramid where the awareness quotient is very, very high, today it is still, you have a digital head or a CDO and people still look upon to that guy. And in my mind, it has to change and it will change. And that beginning has happened where CDO may remain a custodian, but you'll have 100, 200,000 more antennas in the shop floor, in the factory, in the company, which will start thinking of digital. I think that journey has begun because of the pandemic, I believe. And I think that will change really the entire acceleration and the speed of this journey.
True. Very well, very well, Samir. And Rajiv, do we see greater connectivity efforts from your side? How do you look at it?
Yeah, I think, Professor, I think most fellow sort of summarized, and I agree with Annie and all. Conducting a lot of webinars on digital post pandemic. So just taking two bits on it, and I think Samir also sort of very well. There's a tectonic shift. This actually very tectonic shift in the way companies have started thinking. Earlier, it was more about short to mid-term content and results. The biggest tectonic shift now, which is all about a lot, now I've seen companies actually ROI plans years into the future. How certain technology would help them make a market leader 5 years down the line. So that has been a big tectonic shift. A lot of interest for progressive companies coming ahead. And one of the biggest pandemic started, we all were worried, right? Where will the budget coming from on the digital front, especially companies like ours who is digital space. Where were the budgets and all, but to our surprise, I think most of the companies have actually buffed up the budgets towards digital spend, shift which we are seeing. Yeah, connectivity wise, yes, that is backbone of any digital solution, and that we still believe, and we are still, that's something which is going to remain as critical as always.
Thank you, Rajiv. Parno, your looking glass comments, please.
Okay, so, two perspectives. One is from the business side and one is from the IT side. I will say from the business side, the priorities have completely changed. Earlier the priorities were revenue, profit, market share, and ROCE and all these other parameters. So financial parameters mostly. Now the first priority has become employee health. And we have developed a app called Minda Care in March itself. We rolled out on 31st March. We have now onboarded 22,000 employees on that app and integrated with Arogya Setu and all this stuff. So getting real-time information about all the employees who are getting COVID, who are getting okay in the the containment zones or stuff like that. I think that is a fantastic thing we've done. Second priority from the business is cash reserves. Now cash has become king. As you more and more hold on to cash, you become more sustainable and more agile in terms of doing business in future. So that has become second priority. Third is obviously most important is customer engagement. And these times, you need to have better customer engagements on quality engagements so that you are top on the order in terms of getting more business from the customers. From the IT side, cyber security, and one thing I will say, borderless security. I think we must touch this topic called borderless security. That means when employees are working from home, how secured are they? They are not within your borders. They are actually out of your regime. They are in their own homes. They are working maybe in their own laptops, in their own devices. How secured is the data transfer going on from their devices and stuff? So this borderless security is extremely important, and this will be the new norms, I will say, in terms of the cyber security regime. AI, I believe, is very important now because We need to have the insights and the analytics for each and every transaction which is going on in the system. And we have around 12 years of huge data. We need to really understand where we have opportunities to grow and where we have the lacunas to improve. Shop floor digitization, I have already mentioned, is a prime focus area at this point of time. We are doing around 173 projects right now. I mean, just to give you the numbers, amazing number of figures. And these 173 projects, the entire team is extremely busy day in and day out in delivering these projects. And most of the projects are linked with shop floor automation, shop floor digitization. So whatever challenges we faced during the pandemic related to shop floor manual work, we are trying to digitize. And last but not the least, this is my personal priority, is going to a regime of license-free, lock-in-free kind of an environment. So, I mean, anytime you buy any IT solution, we are going into license, and then you go into a pandemic situation. You are not able to pay the license or the AMC. You are into a big, loop. So, how to come out of a license-free regime, lock-in-free regime, and then make yourself more agile in terms of transformation? I think that is what I think I will be looking at. More and more service orientation. So example, I'll give you a small example. We are looking at SOC in a very big way, Security Operations Center. So security completely as a service. I don't need to buy any security licenses and security hardware and appliances and blah, 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 blah. So everything is managed by a third party. You give me the SLAs and the OLAs, whatever you want to deliver to me, and ensure that I am completely secure. I don't want to buy any kind of licenses and boxes. Sorry for the IT vendors, but this is basically, that is one of the wish list I am having. So if we can achieve some certain objectives out of this, I think there will be not only a lot of savings, a lot of efficiencies we will be able to build in the organization. Skill sets, because it's a big challenge right now. So I think continuous evolving of new technologies, you cannot upskill your skill, existing people on a day-to-day basis. So you need to have services which are available and just imbibe on the services and go on with the delivery to the business. I think that is what our major focus areas are right now.
Thank you, Porno, and count me in as well for the new licensing regime for the discussions and Samit. So I think we draw to a close of the panel today. Thank you, audience, for your patient listening. I think we have overshot the allotted time by 5 or 10 minutes, but I am sure that all of you would have been enlightened by the insights from the industry leaders who are in the thick of things, shaping a digital and more connected ecosystem. I am sure that a platform like MIC will help all the startups in turning a better, tuning in better, let me say, focus on priorities of the industries. I thank the NASSCOM and the panel members warmly. And I would like to wish the entire audience a very happy and successful New Year.
Thank you, Prasenjit, and thank you everyone for this great session. I think it was truly fun. We really learned a lot. In fact, didn't realize that we kind of overshoot time because we were listening to just all the conversation you were having. It really brought us some of the great point of views from the every aspect, rather I'll say, what's happening in each of your industry, company or the industry. I think we talked about the startups a lot. What kind of an advice for them, what they can do further, especially on the execution, I think, which is a very kind of a great advice for the startups. We know that they are really innovative and a lot of good ideas comes up, but I think execution is somewhere, I think we all need to help them build up their capabilities. And Anis, to your point about the overdosage of webinar, I agree, but I think every webinar still brings a good amount of learning. So I think 2020 has been, while it's been a crazy year, difficult, but I think from a learning point of view, it's been a very, very enriching year for all of us. So with that, I thank you all the panelists for kind of coming here and sharing your insight. And also, thank you for all being our partner in this and sponsoring the use cases. I hope, you will have a great kind of forward with all the implementation of the POCs and on the use cases. I'm sure the startups will work. With that, I think we are reached to a stage where now let's see those startups live. And what we will do is we will have quick presentations from each of the startups, winning startups. We'll just give them maybe 4 to 5 minutes, and each startup can talk about their solutions, what they have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.